Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The moment you stop living for applause, you begin living with power. Think about that for a second. Why is it that some men lose sleep over a stranger's opinion, while others walk through criticism as if it were nothing more than background noise? Is it confidence, arrogance, or have they discovered something about human nature that most people never do? Here's a fascinating fact. Psychologists have found that people often overestimate how much others notice or remember them, a phenomenon known as the spotlight effect. In reality, most people are far too busy thinking about themselves to spend much time thinking about you. Yet millions of people continue making life-changing decisions based on opinions that will be forgotten by tomorrow. Strange, isn't it? Now, before anyone says, "Well, I don't care what people think," ask yourself this. Have you ever rewritten a message 3 times before sending it, worn something different because you thought people might judge you, or smiled politely when you wanted to say, "Absolutely not"? Congratulations, you've met the invisible audience that's been directing your life from the shadows. Sigma males see that audience and quietly walk off the stage. They don't ignore people's opinions because they're cold-hearted or emotionless. They simply understand something that most never will. The loudest voices are rarely the wisest, and the biggest critics are often fighting battles no one else can see. In this video, we're uncovering the hidden psychological reasons why Sigma males seem almost impossible to influence, why approval has so little value in their world, and why the less they care about being understood, the more powerful they become. By the end, you may start questioning not what people think about you, but why you've been giving those thoughts so much authority in the first place. And trust me, you'll never look at criticism the same way again. Number 1. They know most opinions are snapshots, not verdicts. One of the biggest reasons Sigma males don't lose sleep over what people think is because they understand a simple truth that most people overlook. Opinions are usually formed from tiny fragments of information, not the full story. People often decide who you are after a brief conversation, one mistake, one success, or even one social media post. That's like reading a single page of a book and claiming you know how the story ends. A Sigma male refuses to let someone else's incomplete view become his identity. He knows people judge through the lens of their own experiences, beliefs, fears, and expectations. 2 people can watch the exact same event and walk away with completely different conclusions. If opinions can change depending on who's looking, how much weight should they really carry? He also knows that first impressions are often wrong. The quiet person is called arrogant until people discover he's simply thoughtful. The ambitious man is labeled selfish until others benefit from his success. The one who walks away from drama is accused of being weak, only for everyone to realize later that he was the strongest person in the room. This is why a Sigma doesn't rush to defend himself every time someone misunderstands him. He understands that not every false opinion deserves a response. Time has a way of exposing truth better than arguments ever could. Instead of chasing approval from people who barely know him, he focuses on living in a way that eventually speaks louder than explanations. He would rather be accurately understood by a few than temporarily admired by many. In his mind, opinions are weather. They change with the season. Character is the mountain that stays standing long after the storm has passed. Number 2. They notice that everyone is performing for someone else. One of the biggest shifts in a Sigma male's thinking happens when he realizes that many people aren't living freely. They're performing. They change the way they speak depending on who's listening. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They agree with opinions they secretly disagree with. They dress, post, and even make life decisions based on what will earn the most approval from the people around them. Once a Sigma sees this pattern, something changes inside him. He stops treating criticism as absolute truth because he understands that many critics aren't even being honest with themselves. A person who spends every day trying to impress family, friends, co-workers, or strangers is rarely speaking from complete freedom. Their opinions are often shaped by the very approval they are chasing. This doesn't make a Sigma feel superior. It simply makes him more careful about whose voice he allows into his mind. He asks a simple question. Is this person speaking from conviction or from the fear of being rejected? The answer usually tells him how much value that opinion deserves. He also notices something ironic. The people who constantly tell others to be yourself are often the first to reject anyone who truly is. That contradiction doesn't confuse him anymore because he knows people naturally reward what feels familiar and resist what challenges the norm. Instead of becoming another actor on the world's stage, the Sigma quietly steps away from the performance. He doesn't feel the need to win every room or fit every expectation. He would rather disappoint people by being genuine than impress them by pretending. In the end, he understands that a life built on applause is never fully your own, but a life built on honesty remains yours, no matter who approves of it. Number 3. They understand that approval is a moving target. A Sigma male doesn't spend his life chasing approval because he has seen how quickly it changes. The same people who praise you today can criticize you tomorrow without blinking. One decision makes you a genius, the next makes you a disappointment. If your confidence depends on other people's applause, then your peace of mind will rise and fall every time their opinions change. He has learned that public approval has no permanent address. It moves wherever emotions, trends, and convenience take it. People often celebrate what benefits them and condemn what challenges them. That's why a Sigma doesn't mistake compliments for truth or criticism for failure. He knows both can disappear as quickly as they arrived. What surprises him even more is how easily people rewrite history. Someone who once doubted you may later claim they believed in you all along. Others who once supported you may act as though your success was never impressive in the first place. Human opinion is far more flexible than most people realize. Instead of asking, "How can I keep everyone happy?" a Sigma asks, "Am I staying true to my values?" That question gives him something solid to stand on while everything around him keeps shifting. He also understands that trying to satisfy everyone is an endless job with no finish line. Every choice you make will please some people and disappoint others. If you change direction to win over one group, another group will immediately find something else to criticize. The race never ends. That's why a Sigma chooses consistency over popularity. He would rather earn the respect that comes from staying true to himself than collect temporary approval that disappears the moment the crowd changes its mind. In his world, character lasts far longer than applause, and that's the only reputation worth protecting. Number 4. They measure decisions by regret, not applause. A Sigma male makes decisions with the future in mind, not the crowd standing around him today. While many people pause and wonder, "What will everyone think if I do this?" he asks a very different question. Years from now, will I regret not doing it? That one question changes everything. He understands that applause is often loud but short-lived. People may cheer your choices today, then move on with their lives tomorrow. But regret has a way of staying. It follows you into quiet moments, reminding you of the opportunities you ignored, the words you never said, and the dreams you abandoned because you were afraid of being judged. This is why a Sigma doesn't allow fear of criticism to become the author of his life. He knows that some of the biggest disappointments don't come from making the wrong decision. They come from never making the decision at all. Playing it safe may protect your image, but it can quietly steal your future. He has also noticed that the people offering the strongest opinions rarely live with the consequences of his choices. They don't carry the burden if he gives up on a dream. They don't feel the pain if he settles for less than he wanted. Once he understands that, their approval becomes far less important. That doesn't mean he acts recklessly. He still thinks carefully, weighs the risks, and accepts responsibility for whatever happens next. The difference is that he refuses to hand over the steering wheel of his life to people who are only watching from the sidelines. Number 5. They study outcomes instead of reactions. One thing that separates a Sigma male from the average person is where he places his attention. Most people become obsessed with reactions. They watch facial expressions, count compliments, worry about criticism, and constantly wonder what everyone else is thinking. A Sigma watches something far more important, the outcome. He has learned that people's reactions are often driven by emotion, while outcomes are driven by reality. A decision that gets laughed at today can completely change someone's life a few years later. On the other hand, a choice that earns standing ovations may eventually lead to failure. That's why he refuses to confuse popularity with wisdom. History is full of ideas that were rejected before they were respected. The crowd has been wrong countless times, yet people still act as if public opinion is the highest form of truth. A Sigma doesn't fall into that trap. He lets results do the talking. When he makes a decision, he isn't asking whether everyone will agree. He's asking whether it moves him closer to the life he wants. If the answer is yes, he keeps going, even if the room goes silent. He knows that progress often looks strange before it looks impressive. He also understands that emotions are temporary. Someone who criticizes your decision today might admire the exact same choice once it succeeds. Success has a funny way of changing people's memories. The very thing they called foolish suddenly becomes a smart move all along. This mindset gives a Sigma a level of patience that many people never develop. He doesn't need immediate approval because he isn't chasing immediate reactions. He's focused on what his choices produce over time. While others are busy reading the comments, he's building a life that eventually becomes the answer to every doubt. In the end, results have a way of speaking louder than opinions ever could. Number 6. They realize most criticism is emotional recycling. A Sigma male has learned that not every harsh word is really about him. In fact, much of the criticism people throw at others is simply old frustration looking for a new target. Someone who feels insecure may call another person arrogant. Someone who regrets their own choices may attack anyone bold enough to make different ones. Someone carrying years of anger may unload it on the first person who refuses to play along. Once a Sigma understands this, criticism loses much of its power. He stops assuming that every negative opinion contains some hidden truth about him. Instead, he begins asking a different question. What if this says more about the person speaking than it does about me? He notices how often people project their own struggles onto others without realizing it. A dishonest person finds it hard to trust anyone. A jealous person sees competition where none exists. Someone who constantly seeks attention assumes everyone else is doing the same. People often judge through the filter of their own experiences, and those filters are rarely clear. This doesn't mean a Sigma ignores all feedback. If criticism is honest, specific, and meant to help him grow, he welcomes it. But random negativity, personal attacks, and emotional outbursts don't deserve the same attention. He refuses to carry burdens that belong to someone else. That mindset protects his peace. Instead of reacting to every insult, he lets people reveal themselves through their own words. The more someone speaks from bitterness, the clearer it becomes that they're fighting battles inside themselves. Number 7. They see reputation as a story they can't control. A Sigma male understands something that frees him from an enormous amount of stress. His reputation does not belong entirely to him. The moment people meet you, they begin writing their own version of who you are. Some will see confidence and call it arrogance. Others will see silence and mistake it for weakness. Another person will see the exact same silence and call it wisdom. The story changes depending on who's telling it. Most people spend years trying to correct every misunderstanding, explain every decision, and convince everyone to see them the right way. A Sigma knows that battle can never be won. No matter how carefully you live, someone will misunderstand your intentions, question your motives, or create a version of you that exists only in their imagination. What makes him different is that he refuses to chase every false story. He knows that every explanation invites another opinion, and every defense creates another debate. Instead of spending his energy managing perceptions, he invests it in building real character. He has also noticed something interesting. People often believe the version of you that fits the story they already want to tell. Facts don't always change their minds. If someone has already decided who you are, no amount of explaining can force them to see differently. So a Sigma focuses on what he can actually control: his actions, his principles, and his consistency. He lets time separate truth from rumor. Those who genuinely want to know him will eventually see beyond the gossip, assumptions, and labels. Those who don't were never looking for the truth in the first place. That's why he doesn't panic when people misunderstand him. A reputation can be borrowed, exaggerated, or distorted. Character cannot. And when the noise finally fades, character is the only story that still holds up. Number 8. They have watched popular people become forgotten. A Sigma male doesn't chase popularity because he has paid attention to how quickly it disappears. Every generation has people who seemed untouchable. They dominated conversations, attracted endless attention, and looked like they would stay relevant forever. Then time moved on. New faces appeared, new trends took over, and the people everyone once talked about slowly faded into the background. That observation changes the way he sees public opinion. If fame, admiration, and attention can disappear so easily, why build your identity around them? Why sacrifice your peace just to impress people whose attention may not even last until next year? He has also noticed that popularity often depends on timing more than substance. Sometimes the loudest person gets noticed, while the wisest person is ignored. Sometimes the person doing meaningful work receives little recognition, while someone chasing attention becomes the center of every conversation. But eventually, reality catches up. Noise fades, substance remains. This is why a Sigma isn't impressed by crowds, followers, or temporary admiration. He knows that attention is one of the most unstable currencies in the world. The crowd is always looking for the next big thing, and once they find it, yesterday's favorite is quickly forgotten. Instead of chasing a spotlight that constantly moves, he focuses on becoming someone of real value. Skills, integrity, discipline, and wisdom don't depend on public recognition. They continue to grow whether people notice them or not. Number 9, they treat embarrassment like a temporary weather forecast. One of the quiet strengths of a Sigma male is that he refuses to let embarrassment become a lifelong sentence. He knows that embarrassing moments feel huge while they're happening, but they almost never stay that way. They pass, people move on, and life keeps going. What feels like the end of the world today often becomes a forgotten memory before long. Most people give embarrassment far too much power. They replay awkward conversations in their heads, worry about what others must be thinking, and avoid taking risks because they don't want to look foolish. A Sigma sees the trap. He knows that fear of embarrassment has stopped more dreams than failure ever has. He has learned that people are far less focused on his mistakes than he imagines. Everyone is carrying their own worries, their own regrets, and their own awkward moments. While one person is losing sleep over something they said at a meeting, everyone else has already forgotten because they're busy thinking about themselves. That understanding gives him freedom. He isn't afraid to ask questions, admit when he doesn't know something, or try something new. If it goes well, he gains experience. If it doesn't, he gains a lesson. Either way, he keeps moving forward. A Sigma also understands that embarrassment often comes from caring too much about people who have little influence over his life. Why let a stranger's opinion stop you from growing? Why allow a brief awkward moment to become an excuse for standing still? He treats embarrassment the way he treats bad weather. It may be uncomfortable for a while, but it never lasts forever. Instead of hiding from it, he walks through it, knowing the sky eventually clears. That mindset allows him to live boldly while others remain trapped, waiting for a perfect moment that never comes. Number 10. They separate being wrong from being rejected. One of the greatest mental advantages a Sigma male develops is the ability to separate making a mistake from losing his worth. Most people unknowingly tie these two things together. If they're wrong, they feel embarrassed. If they're embarrassed, they assume people will reject them. Before long, they stop taking chances altogether. They stay quiet in meetings, avoid difficult conversations, and never pursue the opportunities that could change their lives. A Sigma refuses to live that way. He understands that being wrong is part of learning, not proof of failure. Every skill, every success, and every breakthrough is built on a long trail of mistakes. The people who appear confident today were once beginners who got things wrong more times than anyone remembers. What he doesn't do is let someone else's reaction decide how he sees himself. If a person laughs because he made a mistake, that says more about their character than it does about his ability to grow. He doesn't confuse another person's lack of respect with a lack of personal value. This mindset makes him unusually calm when things don't go as planned. He doesn't waste time protecting his ego because his ego isn't attached to always being right. He's more interested in discovering the truth than winning the argument. If new information proves him wrong, he adjusts without feeling humiliated. Ironically, this is what makes him appear stronger than most people. While others exhaust themselves trying to look perfect, he spends his energy becoming better. There is a huge difference. Number 11. They know that confidence is usually mistaken for arrogance. A Sigma male has learned that genuine confidence often makes people uncomfortable. Not because confidence is wrong, but because many people aren't used to seeing someone who doesn't constantly seek approval. When a man is comfortable with who he is, doesn't explain every decision, and isn't desperate to be liked, some people immediately assume he's arrogant. In reality, they're often confusing self-assurance with superiority. The difference is simple. An arrogant man believes he's better than everyone else. A confident man simply doesn't need everyone else to tell him he's enough. A Sigma understands that difference, even if others don't. He has noticed that people are often more comfortable with someone who constantly doubts himself than with someone who quietly trusts his own judgment. Confidence challenges insecurity without saying a single word. It reminds people of the certainty they wish they had, and not everyone knows how to respond to that feeling. Instead of shrinking himself to make others comfortable, a Sigma stays the same. He doesn't become louder to prove he's confident, and he doesn't become smaller to avoid criticism. He lets his actions speak for him. He also knows that explaining himself over and over won't change the minds of people who have already made up their opinions. If someone is determined to mistake confidence for arrogance, no amount of apologizing or over-explaining will fix it. Time and consistent behavior reveal the truth far better than endless words. That's why a Sigma doesn't panic when he's misunderstood. He would rather be quietly authentic than loudly accepted. He understands that the people who truly pay attention will eventually recognize the difference between confidence and ego. Those who don't were never judging him fairly to begin with. In the end, he values self-respect far more than being universally liked, because confidence built from within can never be taken away by opinions from the outside. Number 12. They realize that freedom begins the moment you stop auditioning. A Sigma male eventually reaches a point where he stops treating life like an endless audition. He no longer feels the need to prove that he's smart enough, successful enough, interesting enough, or worthy enough to earn a place in other people's lives. That quiet shift changes everything. Most people are constantly performing without even realizing it. They filter their words to avoid upsetting others, hide parts of their personality to fit in, and make choices based on how they'll be perceived rather than what they truly want. Over time, they become experts at pleasing everyone except themselves. A Sigma sees this for what it is, a prison with invisible walls. The moment your happiness depends on constant approval, you've handed strangers the keys to your peace of mind. Every compliment lifts you up, and every criticism tears you down. That's not freedom. That's emotional dependence disguised as social acceptance. So he quietly steps away from the performance. He stops chasing invitations from people who never valued him in the first place. He stops explaining every decision to people who have no intention of understanding it. Most importantly, he stops measuring his worth by how many people approve of the path he's chosen. This doesn't mean he becomes cold, disrespectful, or impossible to work with. He still treats people with kindness and respect, but he no longer sacrifices his principles just to avoid disappointing them. There is a huge difference between being considerate and being controlled, and a Sigma knows exactly where that line is. The irony is that once a man stops auditioning for acceptance, people often respect him more, not because he's trying to impress them, but because authenticity carries a quiet strength that pretending never can. A Sigma understands that real freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want. It's the ability to remain true to yourself even when nobody claps, nobody agrees, and nobody understands. That's the day other people's opinions lose their grip, and your own life finally becomes your own. Conclusion. The truth is, Sigma males don't ignore people's opinions because they're fearless, emotionless, or convinced they're always right. They simply understand something that changes the way they live. Other people's thoughts are temporary, but the consequences of your own choices can last a lifetime. The moment you stop building your life around approval, you begin making decisions that are true to who you are. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds. You stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown, and most importantly, you stop giving strangers the power to define your value. Remember, confidence isn't about making everyone like you. It's about respecting yourself enough that you don't need everyone to. There will always be people who misunderstand you, criticize you, or create stories about who they think you are. Let them. Your responsibility isn't to manage every opinion. It's to protect your character, stay true to your principles, and keep moving toward the life you want. At the end of the day, the strongest person in the room is often the one who no longer feels the need to prove anything. Real freedom begins when your self-worth comes from within, not from applause, approval, or popularity. If you enjoyed this video and found these insights valuable, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into psychology, self-mastery, and personal growth. If one of these points spoke to you the most, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember this. The opinions that matter most are the ones you hold about yourself, because those are the ones that shape the life you ultimately live.